Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. I'm Reed Cowan. Okay, so lawmakers back in session following Republicans' red sweep of the map. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson talking about gains in both chambers of Congress.
We are looking forward to governing in unified government beginning in January. It's true that on Tuesday, voters rejected what they really felt was the misery of the last 4 years. We're moving on and we're turning the page, and this is something that the American people desperately need and deserve. We are going to raise an America First banner above this place. And you saw a demographic shift that I was talking about on the campaign trail for over a year, with new demographics, new groups of persons who had not traditionally been with the Republican Party, who came on board with us because they believed in what we were saying. They believed the answers that we were providing for all the great challenges facing the country. Republicans in the House and Senate have a mandate. It's true. It was a decisive win across the nation. The American people want us to implement and deliver that America First agenda. And we have to do that while we have that energy and that excitement beginning on the very first day.
Speaker Mike Johnson there. CBS News data for the House has us watching ballot counts closely, not calling it, but characterizing as leaning Republican at the House. Keep in mind, more than a dozen races still awaiting final vote counts, but that is where it stands where the House is concerned. As for the Senate, Democrats did secure a major win in the Arizona Senate race. Here you are, the projected winner, Ruben Gallego. He will defeat former television anchor and Trump loyalist Republican Kari Lake for the seat left open by Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who chose not to run for re-election. Coming up, CBS News Congressional correspondent Scott McFarland will join us live to talk about the balance of power and whether Congress will pass legislation to try to keep the government running in the final days of President Joe Biden's term. That's just ahead on this broadcast. Well, from his home in Florida, President-elect Donald Trump rolling out the names of the loyalists who will make up his administration. A lot of things happening fast here. Overnight, 3 more names revealed. Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio expected to be tapped by Trump to be Secretary of State. Trump's administration shaping up like this right now. If the names are announced formally, this is what his cabinet could look like. CBS News political reporter Jake Rosen is live from outside Mar-a-Lago. Jake, walk us through the significance behind these names that we've heard so far.
And what are we talking about? Read here is loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. It's all about what Donald Trump delivered to the American people, the mandate that he sees returned to him a week ago Tuesday, and what he wants to do going forward. I'm told by the campaign and conversations over the last couple of weeks that they just don't see room for people to not specifically be on kind of the Trump policy express right now. So that's why you've seen allies like Kristi Noem, Michael Walz, Marco Rubio, even though they've had disagreements in the past, coming together, people who were on Trump's campaign, especially late into the summer, on his VIP shortlist even, right? Coming together to kind of build this initial set of cabinet positions that we've seen announced in the last couple of days.
And it's all happening so fast. We're still waiting to hear about some key positions like Attorney General, CIA Director. What other names in the Trump orbit should we be watching for?
Well, the big thing I think outstanding in the next couple of days is Treasury Secretary. We saw John Paulson, a big Trump ally, mega donor for the GOP, remove himself from consideration earlier today. Scott Bessent, another Trump ally and Trump donor who would often be on the campaign trail with the former president, is another name to watch. Also, Linda McMahon, who's chairing up this transition. Does she appoint herself, or is she given a role by Donald Trump for her work in this space? And then, of course, the 2 big outstanding names, whether it's for an official position or just some kind of czar like we saw with Tom Homan and the border position, Elon Musk and Robert F. Kennedy. Are those 2 given official cabinet positions, or are they just kind of left to be direct advisors to Donald Trump during his second term?
So, Jake, while we have you, we know President-elect Trump is going to take a break from these administration appointments tomorrow and head to the White House for a meeting with President Joe Biden. This was something that Donald Trump did not do when Biden defeated him. So what can we expect?
Well, the Trump campaign says that they're going tomorrow. Speaker Johnson said that there will be meetings on the Hill before this. But what this visit really means for the Harris and Biden administration is a peaceful transfer of power, something that they committed to the morning after the election when Vice President Harris spoke to Donald Trump and when President Biden spoke to Donald Trump, committing to something that, like you pointed out, Donald Trump didn't do. It looks like there will be some kind of break in precedent, as the White House reports that Melania Trump will not be in attendance tomorrow due to a previous scheduling conflict, it appears. But although Donald Trump will be there, we'll see what the next couple of weeks look like, and we'll see what kind of decorum there is after a lot of insult barbs and trading over the last 6 to 10 months between Donald Trump and both Joe Biden, his entire administration, people like Nancy Pelosi, and of course Kamala Harris.
Jake Rosen, CBS News political reporter, nice to see you today. We have some breaking news from just a moment ago. A jury just awarded 3 Iraqi prisoners $42 million in a civil trial. It was a Virginia-based defense contractor held responsible, along with the U.S. Army, for abuse at Abu Ghraib prison 2 decades ago that made so many headlines. This verdict marks the first time a civilian contractor has been held legally responsible for the inhumane treatment of those detainees at that prison west of Baghdad. Well, an Air National Guard member expected to plead guilty in a Boston courtroom today over leaking dozens of classified Pentagon documents. That story when we come back. Stay with us. CBS News 24/7 taking you to the White House right now. President Joe Biden wraps up his meeting with Israeli President Isaac Herzog. The two sat down to discuss a range of topics, including humanitarian aid into Gaza and the status of ceasefire negotiations with Hamas leaders. Here's what the Israeli president had to say about Iran. Listen.
First and foremost, we have to get the hostages back home. I agree. And it all starts in Tehran. It all starts in the Empire of Evil, where in Tehran, with its proxies, they are doing whatever they can to derail stability and security and peace, calling for the annihilation of the State of Israel and seeking nuclear weapons. And Mr. President, this has to be a major objective all throughout your term and the next term of the next president, because we have to make sure that they cannot fulfill their evil intentions.
Strong words there. Let's bring in CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Ed, good to be with you. Let's listen together to what really felt like a goodbye between the two leaders.
I'm here on behalf of the people of Israel and the nation of Israel and the state of Israel to say to you, Mr. President, thank you very much. As we say in Hebrew, Toda Rabba. You've been an incredible friend of Israel and the Jewish people for decades. And we will never forget, ever in history, how you stood up with us in our darkest hour, which became our finest hour, how you came to Israel a few days after the barbaric attack of October 7th, how you helped us and supported us with words and deeds. And I want to express our heartfelt thanks to you, Mr. President.
Heartfelt thanks there, but also seeming like paving the way for what is ahead in Israel's war, not only against Hamas, but also in the conflicts in Lebanon against Hezbollah. What did you see in the leaders and the handoff almost of power there between the two? The dynamic there is pretty fascinating to watch.
Reed, good to be with you. This is the first of a series of meetings he's holding this week with world leaders here in Washington, and then later in the week when he heads to Latin America. And yeah, they're all designed essentially to be thank you and goodbye meetings with a series of his contemporaries from across the world. For example, the leader of Indonesia is here later today, so the world's largest Muslim nation. Its leader will be here as well. He heads to the G20 and the APEC meetings in Peru and Brazil later this week, where he'll see a lot of his buddies on the world stage as well. In this case, though, the language used there describing Iran as an empire of evil in the Oval Office and the rather stoic reaction from the president, let's just say he'll get a more favorable reaction to that, President Herzog will, once the Trump administration takes over. And while he's going to convey his thoughts on Iran, he may not find as much public support in those sentiments from President Biden, though there is an agreement, obviously, that they are involved in that. Hamas and Hezbollah and these other organizations are proxies of Iran. It's the Trump administration that's likely to take a far more aggressive stance against Iran once it takes power in January. So remember, this meeting coincides with the end of a 30-day review period, essentially, for the United States to determine whether or not Israel's been violating humanitarian norms and rights of those in Gaza. The conclusion, of course, by the world is that it has. Israeli officials were here in Washington this week to plead their case and argue that they are improving the humanitarian situation in Gaza. But as the Secretary of State told a senior Israeli official yesterday, they'd like to see this alleged plan that Israel has actually implemented in Gaza so that the humanitarian situation improves.
Ed, we also know that President-elect Trump will visit the White House tomorrow after such a vitriolic campaign season. Can we expect more of a conciliatory tone between the two leaders?
Oh, we'll see about that. What this does do, however, is demonstrate to the country and to the world that outgoing President Biden is willing to extend a courtesy that then outgoing President Trump did not to President-elect Biden roughly 4 years ago. You'll recall that when he won, President Obama had President-elect Trump here to the White House, and an orderly transition, or at least one was offered to the Trump team. 4 years later, when Trump was disputing the results of the election, no such seamless transition was called for by the outgoing president. In this case, the Biden administration eager to demonstrate that despite a big, humbling loss, they're going to hand off things to a Republican administration, one that's been quite critical of them, despite those hard feelings, understanding that the majority of the country wants it that way.
Ed O'Keefe, CBS News senior White House correspondent, thank you so much. We appreciate you today. An Air National Guard member expected to plead guilty in a Boston courtroom today over leaking dozens of classified Pentagon documents. Louisa Mueller with CBS News Boston reports prosecutors want to see the accused sentenced for a very, very long time.
While his court proceedings have played out, Jack Texeira has been in custody for over a year for what prosecutors have called one of the most prolific and rare cases of leaked government operations. Today, the former Massachusetts Air National Guardsman will once again enter a courtroom in this building behind me and learn his sentence for violations of the Espionage Act. Here's video of Texeira, his hands up, being arrested outside of his Dighton, Massachusetts home in April last year. March of this year, he pleaded guilty to the 6 counts against him. Prosecutors are asking for Texeira to serve almost 17 years in prison, but his defense attorney, who revealed that his client has autism, is asking for an 11-year sentence. He told the judge that his client accepts responsibility and that he never intended to harm the United States. Prosecutors say for over a year, Texeira posted thousands of classified Pentagon records to the social media website Discord. Those records including troop movements and Ukraine war plans. Texeira was a low-ranking tech specialist at Otis Air National Guard Base, but he had a top security clearance. Prosecutors say he hand-copied and printed the government documents, which began appearing online over a year before he was taken into custody. Now, the fallout from this case goes beyond Texeira. 15 members of his unit were disciplined, and its leader was let go. We will learn his fate during the 2:30 p.m. hearing. Outside of Boston Federal Court, Louisa Mueller, WBZ News.
New video to our monitor circulating on social media today tells us the story of a driver who rammed his car into a crowd of people in China, and the result is tragic. 35 killed, dozens injured there. It happened yesterday outside a sports center over in the southern part of the country. Today, the community mourns the loss of their loved ones. Police say they believe the driver is upset about his divorce. Officers detained the man. Breaking news today from the Church of England. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has resigned after an investigation into his handling of a child abuse case. Just days ago, a report revealed Welby and other church leaders covered up the prolific child abuse of a man named John Smythe. Smythe is accused of abusing more than 100 boys. He died in 2018 without ever facing any legal proceedings. In a statement today, Welby apologized to the victims, acknowledging the church's cover-up allowed the abuse to continue. Now to a case that became a flashpoint in the national debate over immigration. The man accused of killing Georgia nursing student Laken Riley waived his right to a jury trial. Prosecutors say 26-year-old Jose Ibarra, an undocumented migrant from Venezuela, killed Riley while she was out for a run on the campus at the University of Georgia. Republicans, including President-elect Donald Trump, blamed President Biden's border policies for Riley's death. Jury selection is set to begin tomorrow. Congress back in session as many get ready to usher in a new Trump era. We're watching the balance of power as ballot counts come to a close, and also whether Congress can avoid a government shutdown when we come back. Capitol Hill making headlines today. Congress back in session following the elections, and happening right now, newly elected members starting their congressional orientation. Also happening soon, Republican leaders will hold elections for their leadership roles. CBS News data for the House has us watching ballot counts closely, not calling it, but characterizing as leaning Republican for the House. Now keep in mind, more than a dozen races still await final vote count. Still, though, Republicans touting some major wins today. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise had this to say earlier.
As we prepare for this unified government, this unique opportunity that the American people have given us, one thing the American people can rest assured in knowing is that President Trump and this Republican majority are already planning to go to work for them on day one in January to start fixing those problems. We have an agenda we've been planning for the first 100 days to lower food costs, to lower energy costs, to secure America's border, to get this economy moving again so those families who have been struggling can finally get back on their feet, can finally have some savings.
Meanwhile, Democrats come together to hash out their losses in both the White House and Congress. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries joined CBS Mornings to talk about the next steps for his party.
From our perspective as House Democrats, I think we're going to have a family conversation that needs to be clear-eyed, candid, and comprehensive to figure out what happened on election night, why did it happen, and how do we improve upon the performance in order to put us in the strongest possible position to deliver for the American people moving forward. As Democrats, work with the incoming administration whenever and wherever possible and strongly disagree when necessary. And that's going to be the approach that we take.
CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland joins us now for more. Scott, both parties presenting a vision for their future under Donald Trump. Both parties still have several weeks until he takes office. So what happens between now and then?
Oh, if you feel it closely on the floor, the tremors of the political earthquake are still measurable here at the U.S. Capitol. Republicans are making plans to execute Trump's policies. Democrats are making plans to try to slow or block Trump's policies. And all of this comes to fruition in about 70 days when there's an inauguration and there is this new Congress, which appears to be poised for one-party rule here in Washington, with Republicans controlling all the levers in the Capitol and controlling all the levers at the White House. What has to happen between now and then is important, though, Reed. The Congress has to find some way to fund the government in 2025. There's a deadline of December 20th to avoid a shutdown, and every indication is they'll avoid a shutdown again. But how far down the road do they kick the can this time? If they want to have a long-term temporary spending deal, which sounds like an oxymoron, but it's a thing, to give President Trump, when he takes office, a little more bandwidth, a little more runway to do things besides deal with a shutdown. They'll deal with that. They'll avoid a debt ceiling crisis, presumably, and they set the stage for Donald Trump's emergence. And the question that really is hanging over the Capitol tonight is, will he put his thumb on the scale here tomorrow when the Senate chooses its Republican leader? Who will lead the majority in the Senate? There are three candidates. Trump's allies have talked about the long shot. Florida's Rick Scott as being perhaps the most malleable to Trump's ideas and Trump's power grabs if he wants to reach into the Senate and control things. The other two contenders, John Thune and John Cornyn, are institutionalists. All of this plays out by secret ballot tomorrow morning. Let's see which side is victorious.
That's the real thing that's interesting to me, the secret ballot. If it wasn't secret, you can see feasibly that Donald Trump would express what many pundits have said, favor for Rick Scott out of Florida. But because of the secret ballot, that's what keeps the suspense going. Also, Scott, the state of Maine pinging our radar today. That state now heads to ranked choice voting to name a winner of a key congressional race there in that state. What are you watching?
Every seat in the majority is important when it's all so narrow in the U.S. House. And there is outsized attention on what remains in Maine, where there's been a competitive race from the jump between the incumbent Jared Golden, the Democrat, and Austin Theriault, the former NASCAR driver, the Republican who's challenging him. Some states, Alaska and Maine among them, use this ranked choice voting, where if races are close, they move to second choices or third choices down the ballot. We'll see which way it lands, but both parties watch no matter who has the majority. When it's a matter of 2 or 3 seats, each one makes a difference on big controversial things. So whether Golden or Theriault prevails is a big deal even outside of Maine.
You also have some reporting on how Trump's election is affecting the pending January 6 cases.
There's been a wave of filings in federal court here in Washington, D.C. from January 6 defendants asking for any of their pending hearings, their open cases, to be postponed until January 20th, 2025. They're making the argument that Donald Trump hasn't been cryptic. He has pledged pardons for January 6 defendants, and that it's needless, a waste of resources, and unfair to proceed with their cases between now and then if a pardon's going to happen after the inauguration. We'll see how the judges respond to these requests. The Department of Justice is fighting them, saying all of this is speculative and crimes committed means crimes should be adjudicated. But we're noticing the trend. I mean, there are dozens of these filings. They're likely going to grow in the coming days. This could be the final chapter of the story of January 6 prosecutions.
Scott, before you leave us, I just have to ask about one more thing. You know, we start hearing names out of Mar-a-Lago, people who will be going before senators to be considered for these cabinet positions. But you're also hearing, as many of us in the nation are hearing, that Donald Trump wants to fast track that and use a procedure to be able to get these people working on day one. What can you tell us about that?
He wants something called recess appointments, which is a way the Senate circumvents its own self and fast tracks confirmations without, hearings, interviews, and meetings. Will the Senate subscribe to that? They'd be surrendering unilaterally their own power, their own authority, which makes it seem like a long shot. That's why it hasn't happened in so long on a regular basis.
Thus, those two institutional candidates and Rick Scott. Fascinating things to watch. Scott McFarland, thank you so much for that. Well, at the New York-New Jersey border, look at this. Deadly Jennings Creek fire continues to grow and call out the helicopters to dump water and fire retardant there. As of now, the fire consuming more than 5,000 acres across both states. The fire now at 20% containment because of hardworking firefighters. About 10% on each side of those state lines contained. But tragically, an 18-year-old New York State Parks aide died while battling these flames. This is just one of more than 500 fires in the New Jersey area since fire season started. And moments ago, we heard from New York Governor Kathy Hochul with an update on the fire. Listen.
I wanted to take a few moments here to give a critical update on the wildfires that are affecting our state. Right now, we have 15 wildfires, varying degrees of size and dangerousness, but particularly here in Orange and Ulster counties, I'd like to give an update. Right now, New York State is facing the largest wildfire since 2008. I've been in regular communication with an extraordinary leader we have here in Orange County, our county executive, Newhouse, who unfortunately we've had a lot of experience working on disasters together, and your team has always been so integrated with ours, and I'm so grateful for that. Also working closely with County Executive Ulster County, Metzger. I want to share our current response right now. Most of the fires are contained, but we have a couple that still require our immediate attention. Ulster County, the White House fire reached between 600 and 700 acres. Reports are it's contained. We're watching it closely as the winds continue to pick up. But right now, our greatest concern is the Jennings Creek fire here in Orange County. It has spread to over 2,700 acres across the border, 5,000 if you include the acreage across the line with the New Jersey. So 5,000 acre fire, 2,700 acres of which are here in the state of New York. Neither of these fires are controlled or contained at this moment. Some of the residents have been voluntarily evacuated, but I want to emphasize that at this moment...
So if you live in New York or New Jersey and you are smelling the smoke and you are under those air quality advisories, New York Governor Kathy Hochul, she's speaking to you right now, giving a progress update on that fire, the largest wildfires in that state since 2008. Wildfire also a problem out west. We're jumping the map to Southern California, where fire crews now have about 48% containment on the mountain fire. But, I mean, look at that. It was a raging, destructive fire there. Destroyed hundreds of homes, burned citrus and avocado farms. Thousands, in fact, had to evacuate. Some of the evacuees slowly, and you can see it right here, starting to come back home. They're trying to find their way back in. But as they do so, they're finding that there's not much to come home to. Some homes still standing, but not many. The fire literally leapfrogged from house to house on those hot winds. And Jess, we know this. Winds are firefighters' worst enemy, second only to the fire itself.
That's very true. And as we take a look at the red flag warning conditions over into Orange County in New Jersey, or even taking a look at Ventura County down into California, we continue to keep a very close eye on those winds, low relative humidity, and of course these temperatures too. All that pink you see just throughout the mid-Atlantic, wide stretch throughout the Northeast actually. We're continuing to keep a close eye on the red flag warning that the National Weather Service has issued for that region. Current temperatures those firefighters are battling with, of course, are still in the 50s, but we'll continue to keep a close eye on that, especially as we take a look at New Jersey. The Jennings Creek fire, we just heard moments ago, still at around 5,000 acres. The containment is improving, but even though there's not air quality alerts in that region, we are still dealing with some smoky conditions. While those winds whip it up anywhere up to around 40 miles per hour, low relative humidity is still the big key factor for why the National Weather Service has issued that red flag warning. We'll get winds coming in from the north as we head into our evening hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow. They're changing directions a little bit as we head into our Thursday forecast, but from the northeast stretched all the way over into California. One thing that we have in common is this dry weather we've been battling for quite some time. Now over into Southern California, they're about to get hit with a cold front sweeping throughout that region. That cold front's currently up in the Pacific Northwest, delivering lots of rain there. But by the time it makes its way down into the mountain fire, it'll really just be the leftover winds that are going to cause a lot of concerns, especially in those higher elevated areas with wind gusts anywhere up to around 50 miles per hour. So of course, containment has improved since yesterday. Now we're closer to 50% compared to yesterday's 31, but the fire weather conditions last from coast to coast, and we're keeping a close eye on it.
That's why I always say, when you see a firefighter, say thank you to a firefighter.
Of course.
Jess, thank you so much. All right, so let's talk about this. A lot of legal cases still against the president-elect Donald Trump. What happens to those cases? And a New York judge's ruling that could speak volumes about what's to come next. Happening now, 4 women denied abortions in the state of Idaho, suing their state. They're on the stand right now telling jurors how they were denied abortions and had to travel out of the state to end non-viable pregnancies. This lawsuit could clarify medical exemptions to Idaho's already very strict abortion laws. The state currently has 2 laws restricting abortion. The first makes it a felony to terminate a pregnancy at any stage, with just very limited and narrow exceptions. The second allows private citizens to sue healthcare providers who perform abortions after 6 weeks. An update now on President-elect Donald Trump's hush money case. Trump found guilty of covering up payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels days before the 2016 presidential election. So Trump's attorneys want his convictions frozen or dismissed altogether so that Donald Trump can get about the business of the people, they say, and run the country. But Judge Juan Marchand was expected to rule on those moves by Team Trump today. However, the judge instead kicked the can down the road, delaying his ruling until a later date. Let's bring in CBS News political reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman. Katrina, a lot to unpack here. What's the logic behind this delay?
Reed, the prosecution asked for this week so they can decide how they want to ask the court to proceed. And they said it's in part because the defense came to them, asked them to consider arguments about staying or dismissing this proceeding altogether. So the prosecution says they now need to balance the weight of the jury's verdict against the office of the president. And as you were mentioning, on Trump's side, they say that it would be an unconstitutional impediment to his ability to govern to allow this to proceed. So we're going to have to see what the prosecution says. Today we were waiting for Judge Juan Marchand to make a decision about how the Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling would impact the case. And now that has been delayed as well.
Wow. Okay, so the extent of Trump's legal woes not limited to just this New York case. Of course, we know because we've been talking about it for months. Jack Smith's January 6th case, the classified documents case, and the Georgia elections case. So, Katrina, what happens to all of these cases?
Reed, as of now, all of the deadlines in the D.C. election interference case have been paused. That was at the request of special counsel Jack Smith, and he has until early December to tell the court how he wants to proceed. But it is anticipated that this is going to get dismissed. The question becomes whether that will be with or without prejudice. If it's without prejudice, it could be brought again at a later date. We could also get a final report from Smith in that case. With Florida, that case has already been dismissed by Judge Eileen Cannon, but it is on appeal to the 11th Circuit. It's also against 2 other defendants. There's the issue of the lawfulness of the special counsel's appointment and funding that is at play there as well. But it is very likely that because those are both federal cases, once Trump is in office, he could just ask the DOJ to intervene. So those will likely both just go away. Now with Georgia, it's a little bit complicated. They're still dealing with the issue of whether or not the district attorney, Bonnie Willis, can even remain the lead prosecutor on that case, Reed. So as of now, there is a hearing set for December 6th. And it's also important to remember Trump is not the only defendant in that case. In that RICO case, there are a number of other defendants. So it's possible that we could see the case proceed without Trump as a defendant. There are many options here, and it'll be interesting to see how these all play out in the end.
Katrina, it's always great to have a correspondent who is also an attorney. Nice to talk to you today. Thanks for explaining all of this. Well, a scare in the skies. You see that? That's a bullet hole. Gunfire out of Haiti hit 2 commercial flights, and the result is this: major U.S. airlines halting travel to Haiti. The U.S. Embassy says gang members on the ground in Haiti opened fire at those planes in an effort to block travel to and from Port-au-Prince. One of the planes, a New York-bound JetBlue flight leaving Haiti, the other a Spirit Airlines flight from Florida. Passengers on that flight felt bullets enter that cabin moments before landing in Haiti. That forced the pilots to quickly put those planes back up in the air, do the loop you see on the map, and land in the Dominican Republic.
The pilot hit the gas and we took off and we accelerated. Sounded like somebody dropped a steel bowl of nails on the floor of the plane.
So sad. Very sad.
So let's go to CBS News Miami's Tanya Francois live at the Fort Lauderdale International Airport. Tanya, you talked to some of those passengers. It's good to see you, by the way, my friend. We've worked together before. What did they have to say about the experience there on the plane?
Yeah, Valerie Victor, the woman you saw there, she goes into Creole and she explains that, these are the things that are seen in movies. She said she never imagined that this would be actual real life. She's on a commercial plane, not a military plane. She's trying to go home, mind her business, take care of her family, and to be shot at by her own people was just more than startling,
For sure. And I also know from working with you in our EPIC community capacity that you have a deep heart for the people of Haiti. Not only are you reporting on the people who are on that plane, but also the people of Haiti. Give them a voice here on CBS News 24/7. What did they have to say?
Yeah, I've touched base with, of course, my sources on the ground there, talking to them literally not 15, 20 minutes ago. And they all say they're confused. They're confused. They're afraid. School is out. Shootings continue. They want to live their life. Every step they make to go into a better Haiti where you have this interim government, you have this prime minister, now a new prime minister, all of a sudden just comes up out of nowhere. The people are confused, yet they have no choice but to constantly be on standby. Now, again, air traffic is completely at a standstill. I spoke to a gentleman who was hoping to be on a plane on Sunday to go back home, which is
right.
what, a lot of Haitians want to do. They want to travel back and forth. And now his plane, he spoke to JetBlue not too long ago, suspended indefinitely. He has no idea when he'll be able to make those travel plans.
And my friend, we know that Kenya sent some people as backup security there on the ground in Haiti. What can you tell us about that? Are the added forces giving the people of Haiti any sense of any added security there?
Not yesterday, right? Because when you talk about the planes that are coming in, they're shooting at the airplane, especially, the Spirit Airline, the Haitian National Police, who the Kenyan forces were supposed to support, they're guarding the airport. Well, this shooting happened just outside of that area, right? As the plane was coming on approach, about 600 feet above the air, we're hearing, the wheels had already landed. So the expectation, right, is that the National Police, the Kenyan forces, are hoping to secure, but again, there was a gang member. He issued this video warning that because you're changing this prime minister on us, expect something's going to happen. And, well, he fulfilled his promise. Something, in fact, did happen. The Spirit Airlines plane was shot at. JFK, the JetBlue plane heading into JFK had bullet holes. And now air travel is suspended in Haiti once again is at a standstill.
Tanya Francois.
The question is, what are the Kenyan forces doing? I'm sure they're doing something.
Right. Yeah.
Right. No, go ahead. Dig out for me. Thanks, buddy.
No, we're good. It's nice to talk to you. You and I owe each other some emails. Keep up your great community reporting. We appreciate you so much. So great to see you today. We're going to be talking Bitcoin and big business when we come back. Also, endless shrimp at Red Lobster. Say it ain't so that there is an end to endless shrimp. But, by the way, we've got some reporting on the cheddar biscuits. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. So you can see we're watching the markets in real time right now because the stock exchange, it hasn't lacked a lot of headlines the last several days. We'll keep watching it throughout the afternoon. But today's really big headline is Bitcoin, and kind of a love song playing right now for cryptocurrency. Bitcoin reported a surge in price, nearly doubling in value from a year low of about $35,000 to more than $82,000. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady live with me on the stream. Okay, Kelly, so break this down for me. This is a Bitcoin bounce and a bounce up for sure.
Well, Reed, you are singing a love song to me because I love talking about this space. I find it so interesting. Really what this is a Trump trade. Okay, so Bitcoin actually spiked up over 89,000 last night. It's a little bit off those highs, but investors are looking at this and they're saying Trump styled himself as the first pro-crypto president that we will have in the United States, and they're betting that he's going to have a softer regulatory environment that will allow things like ETFs for Bitcoin, for other cryptocurrencies to flourish and be accepted. Now, the Biden-Harris administration have been more anti-crypto, taken a harder line, and so what you're seeing is people are excited. They think he's going to make good on these promises, and Reed, the cryptocurrency sector was one of the biggest spenders this election. So they were betting on a Trump presidency.
All right, so I have another question for you about another headline that comes out of the business world. We know the DNA test kit company 23andMe. Reports are that they're laying off several of their staffers, their workforce shrinking. If I'm somebody who gave DNA to that company, I have a question today, and that question is, what if they file for bankruptcy? What happens to all of my very personal information?
And that is the right question to be asking, Reed, because if you are a customer and you did spit into the tube and find your long-lost relatives, that was all well and good when there is a user agreement with 23andMe that your data, your DNA is protected. But if the company gets to the point where they are sold, so that might be through a bankruptcy process or they just get acquired, you could have a new company come in, and as a user, as a customer, you don't have that same agreement. Now, I've actually worked in mergers and acquisitions before where we bought companies, and I have been in that situation where the user agreement that customers had with the company we were acquiring goes out the window. You can build those protections into any acquisition deal that happens, but yes, this is a question to be asked. I do want to quell some fears, though. This is about the therapeutics arm, so this is kind of a drug creation arm. 23andMe did say that their customer subscription business that you're talking about is doing well, but this is definitely something to keep our eyes on as they navigate through these challenges.
You just had to say spit in a tube, didn't you, Kelly? You just had to say it. All right, so from spitting in a tube to talk of hard hats, so to speak, maybe tool belts, we want to ask you about Home Depot's quarterly sales report. 6% year-over-year increase. What's driving this?
So it's a little bit of apples and oranges. So they actually went and they acquired a company. So part of that boost is the fact that they're finally including that company's revenue in their revenue. So kind of that, it's apples and oranges. It's not comparing the same thing. The other thing, though, is there's a lot of hurricane repairs going on, right? We had Hurricane Milton, Hurricane Helene. People are going and fixing things. The other thing is we've been having unusually warm weather. So people are still outside doing those projects. The stock, though, is down today. And there was a word of caution on the earnings call, Reed. Home Depot said, look, we are still seeing customers spend, but they're cautious. They're putting off some of those longer term projects and to see where interest rates go. So that's kind of, there was good news in the sales, but the stock is down because of that guidance.
Got it. Okay, so from apples to oranges, as you say, let's talk about Red Lobster. I'm hearing a rumor, and I want to know if it's true. Are they really ending the endless shrimp offering? Because they said endless, Kelly. They said endless. It's part of the brand.
Yeah. It is not endless, Reed, but it's because that's what drove them into bankruptcy. So Red Lobster had to file for bankruptcy. They've got a new CEO sent in by a private equity company. And so basically what that means is this person is coming in, cutting costs, righting the ship. And the endless shrimp menu item that came during the pandemic was very popular, but it was too popular, right? Shrimp is pretty expensive. And so if you've got me in there or my husband, we're just eating them out of business. And so unfortunately, Unfortunately, that's going to be gone. The biscuits, though, Reed, they're still there, and they apparently are bringing back a very popular item, hush puppies. So it's not all bad news when it comes to the menu.
You know what? You and I are simpatico, because that was going to be the next thing I was going to say when I said goodbye to you. Just put your foot in the door and tell them not the cheddar biscuits. Kelly O'Grady, it's always
I got you, Reed.
So great to talk to you. Cheddar biscuits. All right, cheddar biscuits. And you can also, you heard it from Kelly, you can blame her and her husband for ending the endless shrimp. In Northern California, look at this. 2 major highways open again after a storm dumped heavy snow in the Sierra. Look at them, putting the chains there. Drivers forced to pull over, some of them stranded, especially if they didn't have the chains. Others put those chains on and said to the rest of us, look, this is what preparedness looks like. And when you travel up there in the Sierra, Jess, this is what you have to be prepared this time of year.
Oh, I know. Placer County getting heavy snow right now, and we're going to continue to see more storms push throughout that region throughout the next couple days. Watch what's happening right now on the map. All throughout the Pacific Northwest, if we zoom out just a bit more, you'll see that storm off into the distance. Areas like Washington, Oregon, and all throughout Northern California getting hit with heavy rain, snow, and of course, devastating winds too. I mean, along the Oregon coast, they've been dealing with extreme winds sweeping in from the south. A tornado reported just yesterday over in Rockaway Beach. Now, here's what's happening as we continue to see more of the severe weather sweep its way in from offshore throughout the Pacific Northwest. We have heavy rain and snow up in the higher elevations into the evening hours tonight. A high wind warning in effect all along that coastline. Those advisories are going to stick around until Wednesday. So if you live anywhere from Seattle all the way down into Portland, I mean the Bay Area too, getting hit with showers heading into the coming days from this exact same system. This is a good time to just prepare, especially when it comes to river flooding in those higher elevations closer to Seattle, all the way into Tacoma. We've been keeping a very close eye on that recently. So an additional 3 to 6 inches of rain expected throughout most of that region. But areas like Forks, we've already seen plenty, and we're expecting a lot more as we head into the next 24 to 48 hours. Those winds have been a big concern for us, though, from Forks down all along our Washington coastline and past that, too. We can expect wind speeds up to around 50 miles per hour throughout that region. And as mentioned, there's areas that haven't seen tornadoes in over a decade that are now starting to see those reports coming in just as of last night. So we'll see more of that probably as we head into this week. We'll continue to keep you updated.
Okay, thank you for that. Hey, we got some breaking news out of Mar-a-Lago. President-elect Donald Trump will tap former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel. Huckabee will join a growing list of names filling out Donald Trump's administration. Nearly 200 world leaders today told to pay up to prevent humanitarian disasters caused by climate change. That's another story. That's the word from the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres at a summit in Azerbaijan. One key leader missed out on that message, though. In light of President-elect Donald Trump's win, President Joe Biden did not attend. This year, leaders discussed lowering carbon emissions and raising funds for clean energy. They also emphasized the consequences of climate change.
In our global economy, supply chain shocks raise costs everywhere. Decimated harvests push up food prices everywhere. Destroyed homes increase insurance premiums everywhere. And this is a story of avoidable injustice. The rich cause the problem, the poor pay the highest price.
Well, just as a civil trial in the case of a woman killed in a 2019 Ethiopian Airlines crash was about to start, today Boeing reached a last-minute settlement with the woman's family. That crash killed 157 aboard Boeing's 737 MAX jetliner. To date, Boeing settled around 90% of the civil cases related to that tragic crash. Meanwhile, Boeing's 33,000 machinists returned to work today after 8 weeks behind the picket lines. This workers' union accepted a contract offer giving them a wage increase and a ratification bonus, but not what they wanted where pensions are concerned. During that time, by the way, the aviation giant forced to halt production at its largest airplane factories. That equated to billions of dollars in losses. That's it for us for now at CBS News 24/7. We appreciate you watching day in and day out. We're always watching our monitors for breaking news in your communities. That's the heartbeat of CBS News. We'll continue watching these monitors throughout the day for breaking news and any other developments in the world of politics. And of course, big changes in the weather for firefighters battling fires on both coasts. Thanks for watching.